Good evening, good afternoon, whoever you find yourself in this weird, wild, wacky world of ours. Welcome to the exciting installment of Darkness in Dublin. Pinchicio, the Italian restaurant and winery, is one of the most exciting hotspots in Dublin. The famous, the rich, the powerful come here of an evening in order to sip at delicate Chianti and eat the latest delicacies flown in this morning from Napoli. So, we will join one such denizen of the evening who's been informed that he is to be the guest of this restaurant's owner this evening as he walks up the white marble steps to the door proper.
Yes, Mr. Beaumont, or Sheriff Beaumont rather, is coming to the event as impeccably dressed as he can be, which really is, considering the amount of money required to even dine here, is probably closer to the bare minimum more than anything else. But being a Toreador, he's probably used his fashion savvy to make himself a little bit more presentable than the average fellow who enters this building, or anything but average, really. And he comes with him some incredibly I would say vintage, but that doesn't really make too much sense. I'd say fashionable wine.
The wine itself is a Contatti di Altieri, which is a very small vineyard located just outside Fraseschio. And the date listed on the bottle, which is faded at this point, is the year 1916.
Getting in that fermentation process early. The wine itself is almost as old as Francis, but he is still the ancestor, and the wine is still the neonate. So, although this does give him pause, there is wine in existence that is older than most kindred. This amuses him. It also makes him somewhat proud.
I was going to say, I did say 1916. You did hear me that, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
There are most kindred in the world are younger than this this incredibly old wine, which emboldens him as much as it amuses him. That there is food out there that or drink rather, that could theoretically be considered more valuable than most of Camarilla society. He doesn't necessarily disagree with this notion. He does not speak of it.
As you approach the door, there are two very large men who are wearing security jackets and black shades. They look down at you and they say, "Name."
Francis Beaumont.
Oh, yes. You're dining with Mr. Medici this evening. Would you please follow us, sir?
Of course. It'd be my pleasure.
One of them holds the glass panel door open for you to step inside.
Yeah, he'll just walk in.
You are hit immediately, not by the aroma or by the or by the smell of this place. No. The thing that hits you the first is the music. There's a full grand piano at one end of the room that's being played by a female vocalist who is also singing. She's singing something from the opera Carmen. The notes are oddly haunting and beautiful.
So, lovely music, lovely venue, lovely aesthetic, lovely aromas. The quick question: would I be obligated to?
That will, in fact, invoke the Toreador weakness.
I was going to say.
I was going to say, is there a specific weakness that Francis has, or is he just the kind of general ooh pretty things?
I don't think I ever gave him a specific weakness, so I'll just keep him as a general all pretty things.
Ooh, pretty things. This one's not too terrible. I'm going to set it at difficulty 5.
Okay, I'll probably still be bemused by it, but there you go. Because all pretty things, and also whenever this sort of thing is invoked, I'd swear I'd tempt fate. So, what were my virtues again? Oh, well, I'm actually not too bad at this.
It's self-control, the roll is, isn't it?
Self-control, difficulty. It's usually 6, but as you say, it can vary, I think, depending on like the significance of the item. Well, I do actually get 2 successes this time around, so I do resist, kind of, barely.
You will still be struck by how lovely the atmosphere is. There aren't that many diners in here this evening. The place is probably about halfway to capacity. The capacity is quite small, though, you notice. The tables are very large and sumptuous, with only maybe 3 or 4 chairs at most to a table, and there are maybe 15, 16 tables, despite the fact the room is quite large. So there's a definite space between the tables, and the chairs all appear to be very high and comfortable. But you are led up a flight of stairs off to the side of the main dining room proper. And as you ascend the stairs, you will see that located up here there is a private dining room where there is only a single table. And seated behind the table, looking very calm as he flicks through a book, you will see this individual. Sans the mask, of course.
It is not the Renaissance in Dublin quite yet, but, you know.
Buongiorno. I'm slightly curious. You will. He contemplates his next words as he stands up and he'll offer you his hand.
Francis Beaumont, absolute pleasure.
I was curious, if you do not mind my saying so. He'll say as he takes the hand in his. Once again, and I always say this when I do it, you can tell, ho Nelly, there's a whole bunch of potence there, but he's not using it to crush your hand. But you can tell it's there. You know, you who have shook hands with Bruja, etc.
Yeah, it's kind of like, you know, someone shakes your hand almost like they're shaking a feather. Like, you can tell that your hand is very light in comparison to theirs, not in terms of, like, weight, but with the force applied.
I was unsure which you would rather be called. Alf, so you've chosen Francis Beaumont. I was going to call you Mr. Fairfax. He smiles as he takes his seat.
I see that your eyes and ears are as sharp as your sense for aesthetic. And he kind of just looks around and pauses.
Would you like me to give you a small piece of advice, Monsignor Beaumont?
I'm all ears, as always.
Well, you see, when one was to look into your finances, as somebody of my caliber might, your account that feeds into the account that is labeled and registered under the name Francis Beaumont has only existed for a handful of years and is being constantly fed through subsidiary accounts that, though they are not named, eventually link back to a central account held by the name Fairfax. So one is to intimate that it is a false name, a very ingeniously created one. However, if you look and you tug at the correct little strands, easy to determine.
Francis looks, or Arthur, looks somewhat amused. He doesn't look too, doesn't look particularly insulted by the revelation or the ambush, if it were to be spun negatively. Um, I'll have to. Then I'll have to ask my subordinates and colleagues, perhaps, to improve upon their skills in the coming decades. Only so they can match your standards.
I have no doubt of your abilities to select nothing but the finest, how do you say, seconds in this matter. Oh, can you please make me a perception, awareness roll, difficulty 6?
Okay, perception 3. Actually, raise my perception. How have I not raised my perception? Well, apparently I haven't. So there's that. So we'll just be 6 dice. That is 6 dice.
Do you have your aspects on, or do you not?
I'm gonna say no because I don't think
it's reflective, so you can have it on if you like. It's up to you.
I think just to be fair, no, because the character doesn't perceive any threat or immediate reason to have it on. If you spot something here, he might. Also, there is the risk of overstimulation, which he doesn't want to incur. I do, however, have acute sight, so if this is sight-based...
It's not sight-based, new.
Okay, I don't get the... okay, it's just difficulty 6.
Yep.
I get 2 successes.
Okay. This restaurant is pleasantly heated, so it is definitely designed for comfort. However, all of a sudden, as you sit back down, you feel a chill go through you, like to the point that you would almost shiver. Like there is something definitely unworldly or unnatural here. Question: in his long life, has Francis ever really interacted with wraiths?
He's probably dealt with Giovanni before. So he's probably encountered this thing before. Probably not in the same way, to be fair. But he has noticed how, when he's dealt with Giovanni before, the temperature's room seems to be remarkably flexible. The air conditioning seems to be incredibly inconsistent. And he has probably noted how, at some points, the temperature just seems to drop below freezing when it really shouldn't. And he does have a fair amount of awareness, so he has probably sensed this thing before in other dealings with Giovanni. Probably in Paris.
I was going to say, so it is very noticeable to you that something is definitely off. Though you don't sense any danger necessarily, but you also are pretty convinced you're not the only two who are here.
Yes. To be honest, Francis expects nothing less in that regard.
I took the liberty of ordering you a meal. I take it that is acceptable.
Of course.
And
I trust. Sorry, you won't interrupt. Is this Giovanni domain, by the way? Is this considered their domain? This is actually kind of important.
Yes, this is.
Oh yeah, then he absolutely will not interrupt or say anything bad deliberately.
That's fine. And I see that you brought the wine. How wonderful. Would you like me to cork it?
At your pleasure. He will just hand over the wine, very with a sort of softness, like kind of he's treating it fairly delicately.
Bellissimo. My. This is a very fine vintage. You must give me the name of your wine merchant. This bottle, I had to understand if my memory serves, sells for 16,000 euros.
I find in matters like these, this is less about what I know and more about who I know. So I cannot take credit, but I thank you all the same.
That is quite acceptable. He will cork the bottle and he will pour the wine into a decanter, and he will then pour some of it. He will then pour a measure into your cup, into your glass, and a measure into his own glass. before he will raise his glass to a toast and he will say, "Your health, Sheriff."
For 2 hours.
Now then, he will take a very shallow sip, nodding approvingly before setting the wine down. A few moments later, food is brought and set on the table in front of you. You are given some kind of diced fettuccine salad that has very, very tiny servings of fish in between it, as well as it being centered with caviar. It's quite delicious.
Francis looks upon it, is appropriately impressed because it is a Michelin star restaurant and it is, well, it is fine dining and precisely the sort of thing he enjoys and loves, but really only something he's come to enjoy since his kindred life. He really didn't have the luxury of fine dining in his mortal life, far from it actually. Quite the opposite, so it is sort of something that has become him.
I was going to say a similar plate is set down in front of the Giovanni, just in case you're wondering, but they're trying to poison you or anything like that. But the Giovanni will take a single bite before he will stop, and he will put his fork down and he will say, "Now then, I'm not exactly sure why it is you would speak or seek to speak with me, Sheriff, unless it is perhaps to get my review on the latest Don Chiletti opera that's currently playing, but I am all ears for whatever service it is that I may be able to provide you."
Well, and Francis takes it by himself and just says, Francis just says, "Well, I would welcome your thoughts and views on the newest and hottest shows in town. I have to admit, I did come here on a more business-related note, perhaps related to your other skills, in particular the ones you apply to perhaps discover my more private self."
Well, I am all of a Twitter.
I am to understand that you hold a not insignificant share within the organization known as Spearhead.
To be politically correct, the holding company that I represent does, but yes.
Recently, we, and by we I mean the organization I represent and laws I enforce.
For clarification, this organization is the Camarilla. See?
I see. Yeah, actually, another question. They are in private, so they can't talk openly about this because.
Oh yes, it's a private dining room. There's no one else
Excellent.
around.
Yes, the Camarilla had one of its courts assaulted and one of its archons, an attempted hit taken out on them by a company, mercenary company within the Spearhead organization.
I do hope that you're not insinuating that the Giovanni had anything to do with this.
Oh no, far from it.
Oh, good. That would have, of course, been a violation of the promise, and we do not idly do such things.
Of course. I would not dare even consider the notion that Giovanni would commit to such a course of action. However, I was hoping that you may be able to assist me in the acquisition of information that may be able to aid me in finding the true culprit, of course. As the payment made to the mercenary company in question, known to us as Squad 11, was made from a far-flung Swiss bank account with a very specific numerical code to it to ensure that it's not tied to any name, which of course frustrates my endeavors to find the true culprit. And being that this figure assaulted an Archon and then assaulted the rest of us, and I'm quite committed to discovering who it is.
So, what is it exactly that I can do for you?
Francis pauses for a moment, takes another bite of his food, because, man, this food is good. This food is really good.
It's really good. On a side note, I've eaten in this restaurant personally. It's really good.
Yeah, Francis does pause for a moment. His financial knowledge is quite limited, so he's not entirely sure what to ask other than to just be direct. And he just says, I must admit, I have all but the most simplistic of financial expertise, particularly when it comes to a modern day banking and private equity. But I do understand that the reason why Switzerland and its particularly specific forms of accounting are so popular is because these codes allow these forms of identification allow for the user to obfuscate particular transactions, allow them to avoid themselves from having to make particular payments, and
This is why it is also he'll cut across you and he'll say, this is why it is also the preferred method of certain older kindred who have no wish to change their identity every handful of years. See?
Indeed.
But if you are going to ask me what I think you're going to ask me, the answer is no. I would be unable to get you the name associated with this account because one does not exist. What I would be able to do, though, it would be grievously expensive on my part. So we would have to discuss price. Is I could get you a list of recent transactions from that account.
That I would be very interested in acquiring, as it would aid me in finding the true perpetrator, and of course emphasize the fact that Giovanni, of course, have no relation to the incident in spite of connection to the business that committed the act.
I will clarify. We have no real connection with the business that committed the act. It is more so the fact that I am very well thought of in certain circles. But I'd be willing to do this. You would have to supply me with the number. However, my price, and this is entirely non-negotiable, Mr. Belmont, would be 2 major boons.
Francis considers this. He doesn't seem to like the term non-negotiable. He very much likes negotiating. It's like having a price shoved down his throat. So instead, he will ask, I understand. But then, if I may ask, why such a hard stance? You did mention that it would be grievously expensive for you.
Because, in order for me to do this, I would have to burn certain assets. Assets that are of value that will take time to recuperate. So, this is why I must set such a high price.
I understand.
Though, he raises his finger and he'll say, I will be reasonable. I will make a clarifier on these boons as offered. But these will be to me and will not be traded and negotiated away. And also, they will not compromise your office.
The gesture is appreciated, Francis says, as he stops and throws from saying, I was just going to ask that, but it's fine.
You get the very distinct impression. How would I phrase this? This guy is very good, and he is essentially maneuvering you, and you get the distinct impression that he is maneuvering you into a corner. But he's doing it in a very polite way.
At the same time, non-negotiable, maneuvered into a corner. He rather hammered that in, didn't he? To him. And Francis has no idea what he really wants. So he doesn't have much to leverage back with. I'll take a moment. Would it be possible to make a politics roll? Not to get the solution, of course, but to have a hint is to not be totally, how to say, not to roll over completely, or at least not to be rude in how to acquire a bit of information, is to maybe discover something to negotiate with this figure.
You can make me, an intelligence politics roll is fine.
Oh god, I'm really bad at intelligence. I need to raise my intelligence.
It sounds like a you problem.
It is a me problem. I do a single success.
All right. Florian de Medici, he's known to be a gigantic patron of the arts. Like, he gives more to artistic causes, whether they be theatrical, artistic in terms of actual painting, sculpture, etc., or other things that, or any other form of art. Then, like, he gives so much it would make a Toreador blush.
Useful, but
maybe if you could barter something artistic, to him that he would value, he may discount a boon if the artistry is of sufficient quality.
And this is the Toreador of no performance and no craft. What are you doing to me, Evan?
These sound like your life choices.
They are my life choices.
Technically, they're your unlife choices.
This is actually, well, it's both. We could call them half-life choices.
I mean, we could, but Half-Life was a terrible, terrible game.
Oh. Anyway, and unfortunately, my character does not have significant high society influence. So,
However, a minor boon from an Archon would certainly give you some nice paintings. Mm-hmm.
this is true. Francis kind of thinks he does actually. He actually kind of eats to kind of stall, kind of buy time. It's kind of like when during an elevator pitch, someone kind of fills up the airspace of gibberish to buy up to give themselves time to come up with more gibberish to spout.
You can have an interesting conversation about how lovely the pianist is. There you go.
Yeah, there you go. Pianist. Yeah.
I do love it. What are you doing to me, Evan? This is the one Toreador that has no artistic ability whatsoever.
No, he is built to enforce the law and do it in an incredibly efficient and artistic way. And by that I mean beat someone with a sharp, pointy object until they stop moving.
Yes, playing the duelist Toreador, that other Toreador trope.
I mean, he shoots people too.
Okay.
He is good at the guns, but yes. And one day he'll have a grenade launcher, and then he won't be so dually anymore. He'll be very explodey.
I was going to say, what, when you have an armory of 4?
Yes.
Okay.
C4 for every PC. It'd be great for negotiating with the Anarchs. In every way that can be interpreted. But yes, enough out of character nonsense from me. Yeah, I have a nice, lovely, brief tangent about the pianist. And Francis will then go on to, speaking of artistic endeavors, what if I could provide you with such fineries? Maybe we could work something out on that particular front. I take it that, like myself, you very much value the finer aspects of life. As he actually gestures towards the restaurant as it is evidence of such.
That could easily be said, yes. I have always had a personal taste for elegance. So, what is it that you're offering in your Beaumont?
It depends. What particular artistries would you say stimulate you the most? I understand that for many aspects of culture you value.
I have always been a fan of painting, personally. I tend to favor the old masters and early to late Renaissance pieces, to answer your question. I have rather the extensive private gallery. Perhaps, if you're interested, I could show you sometime. I even have Caravaggio's skull.
Francis kind of thinks about that. Kind of impressed, but not surprised.
If it helps, even Though he's been dead for many hundreds of years, he still is an excellent conversationalist.
I can imagine a man of his talents.
Yep, I just casually have Caravaggio's Wraith. Mm-hmm.
God damn it.
Well, I mean, let's be fair. If you were a Giovanni who loved art, wouldn't you go dig up, wouldn't you go dig up fucking, I don't know, Rembrandt and have a fucking conversation with him?
Yeah, I probably would, to be honest. But Francis continues, as we consider how incredibly morbid yet fitting that is. I believe I may have the... As I said, I would very much find it an honor if at some point I may be able to view your gallery, but in the meantime, I believe I may be able to contribute instead.
Oh, do go on.
It is actually a rather... strangely fortuitous set of circumstances that ties this particular series of events together. But I am in contact with an individual, quite a old and powerful individual, who values the arts as much as you do, and they just happen to owe me a favor. I believe I may be able to acquire some particularly valuable pieces from Paris or the Louvre if you have an inclination towards such things.
I will make the amendment in that case, Monsignor Belmont. If you are able to do this, I will strike one of the major boons from my previous statement. Does that seem agreeable?
That seems very agreeable. You have my thanks.
He will extend his hand again to shake yours.
And yes, Francis will shake his hand, sealing the deal, the handshake.
Will you excuse me for a few moments? I'll be back imminently with the information I promised.
Of course. I appreciate that you're willing to do such a thing on such short notice. With my gratitude.
Oh, it's entirely fine, Monsieur Belmont. I did it 3/4 of an hour ago. He will stand and he will walk away from the table.
Oh, fuck up burning assets, my ass. Get that back here.
Hashtag Giovanni. Did it.
Oh, well, it's only one major boon.
He will return, though that does raise a very interesting question. Think about this. How did he know the bank account number that he would have to look up 45 minutes ago?
Here's a good question.
There you
I'm
go.
probably going to ask him now.
I know, right? He will return about 10 minutes later with a piece of paper, and he will place it on the desk and slide it across to you.
Oh, why, thank you.
You're welcome.
I must ask, however, how you knew of the number. After all, I had not given it to you.
No. But you're not the only individual who asked me to look into that particular bank account number for Squad 11, as it were.
Hmm. If I may, I also inquired.
That would be... What is his name? Joaquin McManus. He is the head of Spearhead. He was curious why these individuals were paid off the books, and I said that I'd look into it.
I see. That makes a great deal of sense. Well, you have my thanks. And are they done eating yet?
Yes, there.
Right.
For the record, as you look down at the piece of paper, you the interesting thing is the one thing that you weren't expecting that's on the piece of paper is you have the account balance.
Hmm.
Would you like to know how much money is in the account?
How much?
137 million euro.
What the fuck?
Hmm.
Okay, well.
That is the current balance of the account.
Well, I suppose in the age of billionaires, that's hardly implausible.
No,
Um,
absolutely. It is in constant activity. What amazes you though is the amount of transactions for very what I would refer to as ridiculously random shit that's on it. So, for example, it doesn't actually tell you what the transactions are for on the account, but it tells you where the transactions are. So they're primarily up and down Africa and South America, and they tend to be quite large payments. Of we're talking 1.5 mil here, 2 million here, and the account itself was just topped up by 50 million approximately 2 weeks ago. However, there is one that is slightly peculiar that you immediately hone in on. There is an expense for 200,000 euro to Anderson's Rare Books, located in Dublin.
that is handy. But yes, Francis is kind of looking for this. He said you have my thanks, and thank you for the absolutely fantastic meal. I haven't had a meal quite that satisfying in quite some decades.
Wonderful.
Caterers do good work.
They do. Though you do come from the clan that possesses Monsieur Alexander Delano, probably the greatest chef of, well, his time, my time, your time. So, have you had his cooking yet?
No, I have not had the pleasure.
Trust me when I say, Monsieur, you will not be disappointed.
I'm glad to see the both of you keeping each other to the highest standards possible. Francis kind of smiles. It's like, this is good. This is how all clans should be. Incredibly rich and with great food and sense of aesthetic.
In that case, I shall. Oh, my apologies. In, do you know a individual by the name of Monsignor Ivanov?
Ivanov, yes, the Tremere. I know of him, yes.
I wish to launch a complaint to your office.
Oh my, is. Francis stopped for a moment because Ivanov. This is not the first time Ivanov's kind of caused an issue. So let's say, oh my, what has he done this time? I hope nothing too offensive.
He nearly had one of my family members killed. I'm not impressed. I will
I
start at the beginning. He
Yes,
hired
clarification may assist me in investigation of this matter.
he hired my cousin Gino in order to see to a certain matter as it pertains our clan's otherworldly specialty. He wanted some answers. He paid me some boons. We had a nice agreement.
Okay.
Then he brings my cousin into this church. The church is lit on fire. My cousin is nearly killed. I was not impressed.
Cousin of um, Giovanni Man performance. Giovanni Man. Medici employs him for necromantic arts. Ivanov traded boons with Florence or the cousin?
Florin. With Florin.
Oh, okay. Traded boons with Florence.
Needless to say, when we factored in the price, we were never told that there would be risk of harm, and my cousin was almost killed in the process. My family are most displeased.
What were... Actually, I believe it should be listed on the Harpy's Ledger. I believe I looked at that recently. Francis kind of looks back and tries to remember. Yes, it said... last I checked when looking at our own letter of boons, it stated that Ivanov owed Clan Giovanni as a whole to 2 miners.
Correct. However, this agreement was made without any context that there would be danger of the risk of life. Ivanov, through his own foolishness, created this, I'm led to understand. So it is we feel that we are owed. My cousin nearly died due to that man's rancorous stupidity.
Do you know the specifics of how the situation came to be? I know that's
Apparently, there was some kind of demon mark, some kind of infernal bullshit. For the record, when he gets into his more gang, his more mobster mentality, you can hear it. You can see his entire physical demeanor changes in the sense of now he is not Florin de Medici, the very polite social bon vivant. Now he is the I am the motherfucking capo. I will
yeah.
I will put a cap in your ass, pretty much. Um, and he'll say,
He's not playing. He's not being nice. He's pissed off and he's ready to smash that table into 2 tiny pieces or 2 very large pieces, and then it's a very small pieces.
but he'll say some kind of devil's mark located in the church without bothering to find any greater or do any proper investigation. Our friend Mr. Ivanov took up a holy scripture, a Bible, and dumped it on an infernalist ritual symbol, causing it to explode in what has been described as balefire.
Ivanov dumped holy scripture on. And actually should be noted when as Francis is treating this a bit like a witness statement, and actually does have a notepad and is writing down the details of the incident or of the incident as Medici speaks of it.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't quite catch all of that. Apparently, Ivanov dumped holy scripture on.
Basically, he dumped a Bible or Holy Scripture on an infernalist ritual marking, which caused the marking to explode in balefire.
to explode into balefire.
Almost killing his cousin Gino in the process.
Cousin Gino. I assume that Gino is not just a member of your family, but the clan. I presume
Correct.
that.
Gino is indeed a member of Clan Giovanni. So, my issue here is that we were not told there was a risk. We were not informed, and also this individual's stupidity is what caused the damage in the first place. So, Clan Giovanni feel as though we are owed.
I see. I understand the grievance. I'll look into the matter post haste, and I will.
I'm not an unreasonable man, Mr. Belmont.
Of course.
I am more than happy, however, to simply accept my pound of flesh, because ultimately it took my cousin several nights to recover, and he very nearly met his final death. This is a personal matter. It's a family matter.
On Earth, a camera kindred has been deemed to bring a member of Clan Giovanni into harm's way. That would be extremely problematic indeed. I think we can both agree.
The promise cuts both ways. But I have taken up enough of your evening. I have no doubt that you have other things to be seeing to, other duties to be dealt with.
If I could stay here all night, I would. Alas, fate is not so kind.
Well, as my new friend, Mr. Beaumont, understand that you will always have a table here and the food will always be on the house.
And once again, I must pile on the gratitude. But I think I shall take my leave and wish you a good evening before I am tempted to remain any further. Thank you once again.
Good evening.
Good evening.
All right. And as Mr. Beaumont leaves, we shall end our scene. Thank you, player, for playing. Thank you, watchers, for watching. This has been another scene in Darkness in Dublin. Have a pleasant evening.